Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, OP in his 40s reflects on his decade-long marriage with his wife, which started well but later faced challenges, including tensions over their daughter's upbringing and his wife's changing behavior. Suspicion led him to discover his wife's infidelity, and he confronted her with evidence. He ultimately divorced her, ensuring her employer knew about her actions and focusing on raising their daughter. Now let's get into the story. I'm 40 years old. My wife is 35, and we've been married for about a decade. She and I started off with an amazing relationship. We waited to get married because she miscarried in a previous relationship. Eventually, I told her I wanted to get married even if she couldn't have a child. We did, and 2 years later we welcomed our daughter. Things seemed great, but the tension was there at first. Having a kid is exhausting. As you probably know, when our daughter grew up, she claimed that I wasn't giving her as much attention. I explained that she was a new mom and the breadwinner, and I had to make sure that everyone was taken care of. I was trying my best, but I could feel the resentment getting to her for a bit. For a few years, we worked it out. Eventually, our daughter grew up and it got easier to have a relationship. Still, I felt like there was some strange animosity that came with this, even though I did my best to fix this and made accommodations for her as well. While we did try to make things better, there was still some tension there. Even though we did get past the tension before, something still felt off. When our daughter started school, my wife went back to work. I told her that she didn't need to do that, but she insisted that she wanted to for another reason. I'd been handling the bills, but I decided she was just being nice about it, so I brushed it off. She spent less time at home, which I found to be a bit weird. Our daughter was a little older, and I stepped up to be the one to take care of her. She would get home late sometimes because she told me she had to put a lot more time into the jobs that she missed so much. I found it weird, but I didn't try to question it. One night we had a big fight over my daughter's grades. She accused me of not being there since I spent a lot of time at my own job. I called her out, but she called me narcissistic, selfish, and only caring about myself. I was shocked because she didn't seem to actively put effort into the relationship either. I was so confused. She became cold and a lot more distant. She was now more distant than before. I tried to make things better for both of us. I decided, hey, let me go to her workplace to surprise her. When I got there, she was gone. I called her to ask where she is. She told me about a restaurant nearby. I got there, but she was not there. She mentioned she changed her mind and she went somewhere else. I asked where she and I wanted to meet up, but she said she couldn't say. She was not sure yet. At this point, I thought it was a bit strange. I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt though. She told me she's going to a work conference. I asked where I could bring my daughter. She hesitated, saying she was not sure yet. Now, at this point, I didn't know what to believe and my gut feeling said something otherwise. I decided to check her work email since it was open and I found the hotel. I put a tracker on her luggage only to find out she didn't go to that hotel, but instead to another nearby. Why in the world would she lie about where she was going and what hotel was she really at? Curious, I decided to follow her. I got to that hotel and I figure out where she is from the tracking device that I used. When I got up there, I heard sounds. Sounds of moans and the like. I suddenly saw that the door is left open slightly, and that's when I found it. She was with another man. Tears of sadness and rage fell down my face. But I couldn't let her know just yet. I decided to wait for them to walk out. They do, and I walked down the hall. I told her that I know everything, that she'd been cheating on me with another man. She tried to lie, but I pulled out my phone which records their voices. I asked her plainly what really happened. She then goes off to say that I'm not attentive to her needs and that she wanted a divorce anyways. I got so angry. I told her that she shouldn't come home to see her daughter again. She confessed that this is a coworker and that she'd been talking for a bit. She said that she'd been going out with him because he paid for her meals. She claimed that she only kissed him, but the sounds were there. I was furious. She had a child with me. She claimed that I was the only one for her. How could she do this to me? Afterward, I left, but not without uploading that footage of her confession to the cloud. I told her boss about it. That she cheated on me, broke a family apart, and put her own needs before her daughter's. They fired her. I kicked her out of the house. Everyone knows that she's a cheater. So I've made sure to have it known in everything possible. Since then, I don't know where she is, but I've been able to help my daughter recover. I've stepped up, divorced her, and it's been 2 years. I've kept the details private from my daughter since she doesn't need to know. But since then, I've raised her, and I've done my best to provide the best life that I can, despite what her cheating mom did to me. Today's second story. In this story, Opie has been in a relationship with Martha for 1.5 years, including a long-distance part. They received an email from Martha's colleague, Jane, claiming Martha and another colleague, John, have been romantically involved since October. When confronted, Martha denied the allegations. The person initially believed Martha but later discovered evidence on her phone confirming the affair. They decided to end the relationship and walked away from it. Now let's get into the story. I have been dating a girl I met at work. We'll call her Martha for 1.5 years, of which the last half year has been long distance. We've been meeting once a month for a weekend or so. We have another colleague, let's call him John. And we've met his longtime girlfriend, let's call her Jane, on the vacations we've taken in the last year. Jane works elsewhere and has been with John since their high school days, more than 9 years. A week ago, I got an email from Jane. I don't know you too well, so it's probably not my place, but I got jilted, and I don't want the same to happen to the other hurt party in this matter. John and Martha have been involved since October. I don't know to what extent or if it was from even before. I don't wish to know either, because whatever I'm aware of beyond a doubt from their messages and subsequently his confession, is enough for me to break it off. I'm not in touch with anyone in that crowd anymore, and I don't intend to be. I don't know what your relationship with her is. This was just an FYI. Good luck and take care. I trust my girl. So my first was to show her this email and ask her to find out if John is okay. After what seemed to be an ugly breakup, as they're very close, she got defensive and said I had no right to accuse her and I should have deleted the email and have never shown it to her if I truly trusted her. I spoke to another colleague, Bill, and told him what had happened. He said John had told everyone he had a breakup sometime before October, but continued hanging out with Jane, which everyone had found odd, intervened, and then finally left him alone on the subject. He also told me that Martha and he spent a lot more time together now, though he didn't suspect anything romantic. Now, I'm not proud of this part, but I got frustrated rated at this point, and wrote back to Jane asking her for evidence. She wrote back saying she didn't want to get involved any further and the confrontation was in person, so anyway, she had no evidence. I wrote back, desperately asking for some message or chat for me to confront. She wrote back giving some personal details of the things she had read, the terms of endearment they had for each other, the physical involvement, description, etc., and said to either trust her or not, but please keep her out of it for now. I confronted Martha with the details and she denied the whole thing. I really don't know what to do. Update: here's how it unfolded. I told her I was uncomfortable with this whole scenario and would prefer if she maintained some distance from John. She burst into tears, saying she was only being a good friend to him to help him through his rough breakup. I demanded to know why she hadn't told me about the breakup if she knew, what with all her continuous yapping about every other random thing. She said he had told everyone about the breakup but was still trying to make it work with her, so she wasn't sure what the scenario was. She went on to tell me that Jane was a complete psycho and told me horror stories of things she did for attention. Jane was allegedly envious of my girl's closeness with John, even though nothing was going on between them. She said John had finally severed ties, which caused her to lash out and attack her. Martha through me. I believed her and felt quite terrible for doubting her after a lot of her tears were spilled. I apologized profusely and suggested we keep our distance from both of them until they sort out their own shit. She reluctantly agreed. A day later yesterday, I got a call from Bill, another colleague, and he tells me they were all out together and he saw them making out when they excused themselves for a smoke break. Martha doesn't smoke. I didn't confront or react. I requested Bill to not mention any to her or John about having alerted me. I told her I had left a few files on her computer and couldn't remember where or what they were called, so I needed some remote access to her system for some time. I pretended it was extremely urgent and I feigned a state of panic. I told her it would take me some time to transfer the files. She gave me access and went to take a shower. I went into her Gmail, but it had nothing. Facebook chats, nothing. Skype, nothing. I felt like shit again, thinking, I'm terrible for doubting her. And then I realized she had left her phone on a charge through a USB on her laptop. I accessed the folders and there it was. The ugliness bare of the person I had spent the last 1.5 years loving. 6 chats, dirty pictures, references to the nights they were together, panic at respective other halves, finding out nope, he hadn't broken up, just told people in the office that he had. And finally, the latest message of taking it slowly until things settled down. I cleared my traces and logged out. I haven't confronted her yet. I'm deciding between a stone-cold, dignified walk away or to make her weep, drama-induced walk away. Last update, I left without a word. I know she will try her emotional drama and try to explain away even this with absurd logic or playing the victim. Or get on the offense by attacking me. I'm not interested in any of that. I left and she can figure out why. To hell with her. As advised by a lot of you. Thanks to Jane, she replied, saying good riddance. Take care. Martha has asked a few common friends to ask why I've blocked her. I told them not to speak of her to me or of me to her. She's a mess. From what here, I honestly don't give a shit. Indifference feels sweet. Didn't expect to feel this good so soon. I'm grateful to her for being such an in-your-face bitch. That sure helps. Thanks everyone, for your support. To better times ahead. Cheers. Today's third story. In this story, they hired their 22-year-old nephew as a babysitter for their 2 children. However, the wife's behavior around the nephew made him suspicious. One day, they came home to find the wife and nephew alone in the bedroom, and the wife seemed flustered. Later, the nephew confessed to having been intimate with the wife, feeling guilty and seeking forgiveness. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I were married for 18 years. Some of the magic in the bedroom was fading, I'll admit that, but we were also parents to 2 children, 12 and 16 years old. In an attempt to rekindle our relationship, I got us a new bed frame and mattress fit for royalty, along with lingerie for her. She loved it, and it actually did help us relax and have a good time. We worked a lot, so I made arrangements for my 22-year-old nephew to babysit for us. When my wife met him again for the first time in 5 years, he'd grown into a young man and I saw her face. It made me mad. I actually brought it up with her, how her eyes sparkled when she saw him, and I reminded her he's only a few years older than our oldest. She thought I was being ridiculous and denied anything I saw. I'd known her long enough to know when she was excited or liked what she saw. She couldn't hide it. Fast forward another month and there wasn't much of a change. Nothing that bad, but nothing that great either. Even though I was trying, we each had something to do after work, separately, so I asked my nephew to go to our house to watch the kids again. My wife told me she'd be home at the same time as me. When I got home, her car was already there and so was my nephew's. The house looked dark. I didn't find anyone downstairs, so I went upstairs, pretty nervous about what I was going to find. Our bedroom door was open and the lights were on while my wife turned off the television. My nephew looked extremely nervous that I was home. Seeing him in my bedroom, I asked what was going on and my wife said nothing. They were just watching tele. The kids went to bed. My nephew was silent, looking around the room nervously before he said he had to go. I paid him hesitantly. He had trouble looking me in the eye. After he left, I noticed my wife's undergarments on the floor, nearly under the bed. I asked her if anything bad happened while I was. And she was caught off guard by the question, but she just asked what I meant and said no. I was just super uncomfortable laying in bed all night. The next day, I managed to pull myself together with an hour of sleep and sit in my car ready to leave for work before I pulled out my phone. Dinged. It was a long message from my nephew. He apologized for having intimate with my wife last night. He said he couldn't sleep at all. He felt so bad for what he'd done and he couldn't forgive himself until I forgave him. The poor kid didn't realize he stole my whole life away from me. Everything I worked for and built with my wife and the mother of my children was gone. I only replied to thank him for telling me, but I was devastated. I couldn't drive. I couldn't move. My wife came out to go to work, and I wouldn't move my car out from behind hers. She expected me to, so she sat in her car waiting. She was on her phone and got a message from my nephew telling her. He told me what they did. I walked up to her window and could hear her on the phone calling him a little turd for telling me. When she explicitly told him not to tell me anything, she was freaking out. And when she noticed me standing next to her window, she jumped out of her skin, then started crying. I broke down too, because it was hard to look at her. I told her everything we had was done over. I started walking back in the house and she followed me, panicking and crying. She asked me to forgive her for this one mess up. In all the years we were married, she was loyal to me and the mother of my children. She didn't want me to break up our family just because of this one moment of weakness. I told her it wasn't just one moment of weakness. It was a moment she decided she would have intimate with my nephew behind my back. It was a choice she made to betray me, her husband of 18 years. I told her I never wanted to see her again. She gave up on us. Our marriage got boring, so she gave up and cheated on me. I was sobbing, which made her sob. I wasn't worried about my ability to move on from this. I was crying for our kids. Their lives were going to change, and it was because of their mom. I was willing to stay with her through thick and thin, no matter what. I would sacrifice and communicate whatever it took, but it takes two. I told her to get out of the house. She hadn't brought enough change into our kids' lives. The least she could do was leave the house so they didn't have to move with me. After arguing, she actually agreed, but warned me she was going to get custody of them. I didn't argue. I knew I could prove her infidelity and irresponsibility. In addition to that, the court ruled everything should remain as normal for the children as possible. So they continued living with me and going to the same school. My wife had to live with her closest relative for a while, an aunt that didn't know her very well and lived 45 minutes away. The kids were extremely upset. It isn't easy on anyone when a family is broken apart. And each time they spoke on the phone with their mom or saw her in person, it was awkward. And they wanted to know why she broke up with their dad. They told me she would cry when they asked because there wasn't a good answer. And I knew she felt like a stupid, foolish woman. She eventually gave up carpooling to work in the area, but I think it's because even the people she worked with knew what she did. I became somewhat of a bachelor for the middle-aged women in town, and I couldn't complain. Someone else started watching my kids, but I never told the kids why.